lot of friends over there, and this is one of them right here.
Today will be seen as a really significant day in our relationship.
After months of delay and hand-wringing about the state of the US-Australia alliance, Anthony Albanese at last made it to the White House, emerging a winner.
I would give it 10 out of 10 in diplomatic and political terms. He got in and out of the room without any mishap or Trumpian rant.
The Prime Minister got pretty much everything that he needed from this meeting. A personal display of friendship from the famously capricious president, a $13 billion critical minerals deal, and most important of all, reassurance from Donald Trump that Australia is carrying its weight on defence spending and the AUKUS submarine pact.
Well, I'd always like more, but they have to do what they have to do. You know, you can only do so much. I think they've been great. They're building magnificent holding pads for the submarines. It's going to be expensive, too. You wouldn't believe the level of complexity, right, and how expensive it is.
Trump did not urge Australia to spend more on defence in any bullying or hectoring way, as a lot of people predicted he would.
The President's embrace of Anthony Albanese blunts months of criticism that the government has allowed the relationship to wither. Instead, there was a full-throated recognition of Australia's contribution to global security. But the biggest revelation of all was on China. The President suggesting AUKUS may not even be needed to avoid a conflict.
I don't think we're going to need it. I think we'll be just fine with China. China doesn't want to do that.
He made it very clear today that he's not interested in a conflict with China. He's pursuing a trade deal. He thinks that will come off, and this is the way that peace will be maintained. So for us, it means that, you know, the ramping up, I think, of the China threat narrative that we've seen in this country for the best part of a decade now, you know, Trump is not on that page.
National security analysts have described the President's comments today on China and Taiwan as his most consequential to date. They also happen to echo Anthony Albanese's strategy of constructive engagement with China, of putting business and trade ahead of conflict.
I think we're going to get along very well as it pertains to Taiwan and others. Now, that doesn't mean it's not the apple of his eye, because probably it is, but I don't see anything happening.
The China hawks in both Canberra and Washington will be rather disappointed in what Trump said, because what he's basically said is that the whole rationale for this massive investment in AUKUS is not actually a realistic one. In other words, we don't need to deter China because President Xi, filled with goodwill and bonhomie towards President Trump, is not going to contemplate any hostilities.
Donald Trump provided his first real public assurance that Australia will be getting US-made nuclear-propelled submarines, and that work on building the boats is gathering pace.
Can you guarantee Australia will get the boats?
Oh, it's getting. Oh, no, they're getting it.
But there are lingering doubts on both sides that Australia will receive the boats as planned early next decade. Trump's Secretary of Navy raising a rare note of discord at today's press conference, suggesting work is still underway on details of the AUKUS pact between the US, Australia and UK.
What we're really trying to do is take the original AUKUS framework and improve it for all three parties and make it better and clarify some of the ambiguity that was in the prior agreements.
It's not yet clear what those ambiguities are, but for AUKUS skeptics like Malcolm Turnbull, today's meeting hasn't changed anything.
Of course Trump loves the AUKUS deal. He gets $3 billion US, he gets a base in Western Australia, he gets a dockyard in Western Australia. And yes, he'd love to sell us some submarines, of course he would, but he doesn't have any obligation to sell us to them unless his Navy can spare them.
There are sections of the administration extremely uncomfortable with the idea of giving away 3 to 5 submarines when they simply don't have the numbers themselves in their own battle fleet. But without this ambiguity being cleared up, we are still going to see this kind of shroud of mystery, sort of like a veil over this deal.
Other unresolved issues, such as Donald Trump's tariffs on Australian steel and aluminium exporters, mean the Prime Minister still has work to do. And he may need to replace his ambassador to Washington, whose previous caustic criticism of the president was raised at today's meeting.
Where is he? Is he still working for you?
Yeah.
You said bad?
Before I took this position, Mr. President,
I don't like you either. I don't, and I probably never will. Go ahead.
Kevin Rudd is understood to have later apologised privately to Donald Trump. And by recent standards of how Trump treats his critics, take for instance this AI-generated video response to weekend street protests, his treatment of Kevin Rudd is positively soft.
I would think taking vengeance on Kevin Rudd would be very low down on Donald Trump's priorities, and I think his rather tongue-in-cheek remarks are evidence of that.
As the Prime Minister returns to Australia, he can breathe a sigh of relief. He's avoided a Trump-induced diplomatic disaster and built a relationship with the President without resorting to cringeworthy sycophancy.
He was warmly praised. He didn't look like he was sucking up. He got a deal done. Terrific. I mean, bank that and get on the plane back to Australia as quickly as you can, would be my advice.
The Acting Prime Minister and Defence Minister Richard Marles joined me earlier. Richard Marles, welcome.
Good evening, Michael.
So Donald Trump says it's full steam ahead for AUKUS, but sitting at the same table, his Navy Secretary John Phelan was mentioning the need to clarify some of the ambiguity. What are the ambiguities?
Well, firstly, I think President Trump answered that question emphatically. I mean, we are working very closely with the United States in respect of AUKUS. AUKUS is underpinned by a very clear trilateral treaty between Australia, the United States and the United Kingdom. And so it's very clear what we're doing and the process. Having said that, this is a giant project. I mean, for a country to acquire a nuclear-powered submarine capability is a massive endeavour, and it really does involve a trilateral cooperation.
But should there be ambiguity in such a big project?
Well, there's not.
But the Navy Secretary said there are, which need to be clarified.
And again, I think you look at President Trump's words here, he answered that question emphatically. I mean, it's really clear what we're doing with AUKUS, but we want to know how we can do it better. We've embraced the review that the United States have done and are doing, just as we did a review when we came to office, and the Brits did a review when they came to office. And in anything of this scale, we do want to see how we can do it better and where there are more opportunities to progress. But the fundamentals of this have been full steam ahead, and that was affirmed by the President last night.
And the President was very clear that, in his words, you will get the subs, Australia will get the subs. Do you share that confidence? Do you share the confidence that the timeline will be observed, given all the problems the US shipyards have?
Well, I absolutely share the confidence, and I absolutely appreciate the affirmation that was provided by President Trump in the meeting. But the confidence is also very much driven from the work that we're doing together. I mean, I know and I can see at a day-to-day level what our partnership is doing to increase the production and sustainment rates of Virginia-class submarines for the United States Navy. Our engagement through AUKUS is actually seeing many more sea days going into the back end of this decade, and that's what we need to do for the United States Navy to provide the space for the transfer of the Virginia-class submarines to Australia in the early 2030s. And I'm very confident that we will well exceed the benchmarks that we need to in order for that transfer to occur.
Australia's been under a lot of pressure from the Trump administration to boost its defence spending, yet overnight the President seemed pretty relaxed about Australia's defence spending. Given all that pressure, did that come as a surprise to you?
Well, no, and I mean, there's been a fair amount of kind of breathless commentary about this, but in all the conversations I've had with my counterparts in the US, they've appreciated the story that we've had to tell. I mean, we're engaging in the biggest peacetime increase in defence spending in Australia's history, and that is a story which is well understood by the United States, and they can see how we are lifting up what we are doing. And so, it's not a surprise to me that we had those comments from President Trump, and they very much align, I might say, with what the Prime Minister has been saying, which is that what we need to do is to assess our strategic needs, to understand the Defence Force we need to build to meet them, and then to resource that. And that's what we're doing. And in doing that, we are yielding a very significant increase in our defence spend.
Donald Trump says China does not want to invade Taiwan. Do you share that assessment?
Well, look, I think that's right, but I think we live in a world where there is very significant strategic challenges, and
So it's possible, in your view?
well, I don't want to speculate. What I think is that what we have with China is obviously the biggest military build-up, conventional military build-up that we've seen since the end of the Second World War. We are seeing a country which is seeking to shape the world around it in a way that we weren't seeing 15, 20 years ago on the part of China, and that presents challenges for Australia. Now,
And one challenge, excuse the interruption, is in the South China Sea, in the skies above, the Chinese plane putting flares, as you say, in a very unsafe way towards an Australian Air Force jet. You've raised concerns with China over this, but this happens again and again and again. Surely this is something that can't continue, because inevitably there could be an Australian service personnel who gets injured or worse.
Well, I think a few things. One is we have a challenging strategic landscape. As I said, China is seeking to shape the world around it in a way that we weren't seeing before. And that is the way in which it's asserting itself in places like the South China Sea. And that's a body of water that matters to us. Most of our trade goes through the South China Sea. So what won't change is Australia's assertion of the rules-based order in that body of water. I mean, we will continue to operate in the way which asserts the rules-based order, which asserts the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, because freedom of navigation of that part of the world is actually fundamental to Australia's prosperity and to Australia's national interest. Now, there are risks, and we see them, and it's why it's so important that in moments such as this, that we are very clearly communicating to China our position.
And yet they still do it.
Well, what matters is that we are very clear in our communication here, and what also matters is that we're not going to be deterred from asserting the rules-based order in international waters, in international airspace, in a part of the world where our trade passes and where the bulk of our trade passes. So the one thing that's not going to change here is Australia's posture and Australia's attitude. We will continue to do this work.
Is the critical minerals deal signed by the Prime Minister and the President in part all about stopping China's manipulation of the critical minerals market in terms of export controls and price manipulation?
Well, I think it's about pursuing an opportunity, but I think it is about creating a diversity of supply chains. In other words, other choices in terms of the processing and refinement of critical minerals than China. I mean, right now we do see that downstream processing is in large measure done in China of rare earths and critical minerals. We're extracting them right now in Australia, but the place where almost all of the processing occurs is China. And this is an opportunity to diversify that, which actually I think is going to be really good for the global market. It's clearly going to be good for Australian industry. It's also very good for the national security of both Australia and the United States.
We've all seen that awkward exchange involving the President and Australia's ambassador to the US, Kevin Rudd. Donald Trump said he didn't know who Kevin Rudd was. That's got to hurt.
Well, look, we have just had a very successful meeting between our Prime Minister and the President of the United States. When you look at the relationship that we have with the US right now, we have the lowest tariff rate. Our economic relationship is as strong as ever. Our security relationship, I would argue, is as strong as ever. AUKUS is proceeding at a pace. We are meeting all of our milestones. The relationship is in really good shape, and Kevin Rudd deserves his share of credit in respect of that. He's our ambassador in the United States. You know, I see firsthand the work that he does, and he is doing an excellent job representing Australia in Washington.
After the meeting, did he apologise to Donald Trump?
Oh, look, I think...
You surely know, given word back from your colleagues there.
I think after the meeting, they had a friendly interaction, but...
Did that involve an apology from Kevin Rudd?
They had a friendly interaction.
So
I'm not sure what it was, but they had a friendly interaction. And what I would say is this: Kevin deserves a lot of credit for where the relationship is at. Kevin, I saw firsthand, did an enormous amount of work in the lead up to this meeting. He's doing a great job as our ambassador.
Richard Marles, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Mark.